is found in the forest canopy, which up until now has been virtually inaccessible to scientists. Now, for the first time, a scientific expedition has been launched to try and get on top of the canopy, over 40 meters above the ground. It's a dangerous mission, and they've had to come up with some unusual ways to reach this unknown world.
It's an opportunity to access habitat that otherwise is not available to science, and we have high hopes of finding perhaps a few new species.
Time is running out for the rainforest, but if they can reach the canopy and unlock its secrets, it could be the key to its future survival. This is the Maswala Peninsula in Madagascar. Situated off the coast of Africa, Madagascar has been cut off from the rest of the world for 80 million years. This isolation led to the evolution of unique animal and plant species. "75% are found nowhere else on Earth. But in Madagascar, as in much of the world, tropical forests are under attack. In cutting down the trees for firewood or burning them to cultivate the land, man has endangered the rare species that the rainforest has protected and cherished for so long. The Maswala National Park is the largest wilderness left in Madagascar. It is irreplaceable.
We have no idea how many species remain undescribed in this island, but with the deforestation rate, there's actually very little time left to study the fauna.
A scientific expedition has been set up to document the forest's extraordinary diversity and to identify new species before they are lost forever. A team of over 100 people has been assembled, working from a makeshift lab set up on the edge of the forest. 70 international scientists are collaborating with local experts, whose knowledge of the forest is invaluable. During the 3-month expedition, they will study the plants, insects, frogs and reptiles to produce a comprehensive survey of forest life. But the main aim of the expedition is to study the most diverse habitat of all, the canopy. They believe that many undiscovered species live only in the treetops. Before they explore the canopy, they set out to investigate the forest floor.
All right. All right.
You know what it is?
You want to dig them out? Please take a look.
Which one?
Is that a frog?
What's this guy?
Throw him in the bag.
I don't know, he's got an eye spot.
Yeah.
Eye spot on both sides. Looks like he's looking at you. How common do you think this one is?
Probably not.
I don't think this one's too common. Hard to find because they're buried. Burrowed in the dirt. We have to figure out which one it is.
You need a bag, Mark?
Okay.
At first sight, the tropical forest seems chaotic. But in reality, plants and animals live here in perfect symbiosis. Each life form is both host and parasite, predator and prey, supporting the forest's delicate ecosystem. The balance is sophisticated, but precarious. It relies on the complex interaction between microscopic organisms, huge trees, humble insects, and highly developed mammals. Professor Francis Allais is an expert on the tropical rainforest. For him, it is a constant source of wonder. Even a simple tree creeper, the liana, is mysterious.
What seems to be particularly interesting in the case of the liana is that they are by far the least known plant in the forest. With the grasses, anyone can pick them, or rootless plants that live in the treetops. People are fascinated by them, and there are worldwide collections. Even with the trees, one can cut them down and collect the leaves. But how are you going to cut down something like that? First of all, we don't even know which part of the ground it comes from. And even if we could find the bottom, it's clear that cutting it would not make it fall. We can imagine that this liana is attached to that tree there, but most likely it's also attached to this one, and that one, and that one, and so to cut down something like that, you'd have to cut down a hectare of forest. That's why we know so very, very little about the liana. Their trick is that they can live without a trunk, so they climb very quickly and with a reduced metabolism. This enables them to be very active up above. They have a considerable leaf surface and enormous sexual activity because liana are plants with an overabundance of flowers, as is the case with the Madagascar jasmine or the bougainvillea.
Flowering plants appeared on Earth relatively late, but they adapted so well that they colonized almost every natural environment on the planet. Jean-Noël Labat is the expedition's leading botanist.
We don't see many flowers, but often there are a lot of species that have really small flowers. And it's only once you look closely that you can see them. Like here, look. There is a little Dioscorea climbing up here. It doesn't have many flowers.
Henri-Pierre Abelonc is an insect specialist from the Natural History Museum in Paris. There are over 4,500 species of butterflies and moths in Madagascar. He believes many are only found in one small part of the island and nowhere else on Earth. He knows that some rare species of moth make a collective cocoon as part of their reproductive cycle. The best chance of finding one is deep inside the rainforest.
Here we are looking for cocoons, the big triangular cocoons that are spun collectively by a number of caterpillars to form the chrysalis formation. And that takes place here, on the lianas that hang under this big tree. Hey, I can see one. There it is. So as usual, there are a lot of ants. You can see here these granules each correspond to a cell in a moth's individual cocoon. And there we have a collective cocoon which always ends in a point like that, suspended from a branch. Inside there is a cushion of silk which must be a good insulator. Obviously the cocoons are completely sheltered from the weather until the moths emerge. I think the moth inside doesn't have to eat. In fact, I'd be curious to know if by any chance it has a proboscis. The moth mates, lays eggs, and then dies. And some moths don't even eat. They live on the reserves collected by the caterpillar.
Henri-Pierre sets off to the lab to study the cocoon further.
What's remarkable is the variety in the size of the cocoons. Look at this one, it's in two sections because of the leaf that was in the middle. And then you have cocoons which are absolutely enormous. It depends on the size of the community of caterpillars which spin them. Down to a small community of a handful of caterpillars that make mini cocoons. There's a moth on the cocoon. It's just come out as we were looking for some others. So 4 moths have come out today and 2 came out yesterday.
When he examines the cocoon in more detail, he discovers that the moths weren't the only inhabitants.
This is an old nest, it's abandoned. The moths have all come out. And inside we can see all the individual cocoons. If we open up a cell like this, an individual cocoon, we can see all the debris inside from the skin of the chrysalis that emerged. Well, that's very interesting because in fact it's not a moth that came out here. Here you can see a pupa, which means that the moth had a parasite and was killed by the larva of a fly. But the funniest thing is that the pupa in turn has been killed by a micro-hymenopteron, and that hole was made by the parasite. So there's a whole chain. The chrysalis was killed by a fly larva, which ate it. The fly larva became a pupa. But it was then killed by the parasite, which emerged at the end of the chain instead of the moth.
2 weeks into the expedition, and it's the moment they've all been waiting for.
It was, of course, always our dream, as it was always a dream of botanists and biologists, to have access to the canopy, because this is the most life-intensive biosphere on this world.
With the initial exploration of the forest floor complete, they are finally ready for their first attempt to reach the canopy. The only way to get to the top of the trees is from above, and this is how they plan to do it, with a giant 400 square meter raft, nicknamed the Pretzel. It's been specially designed for the expedition. The airship will try to deposit the Pretzel on top of the canopy, 40 meters above the forest floor. It's never been tested before. This is its first treetop landing. It's a delicate operation. If it's positioned on a weak part of the canopy, it could be dangerously unstable. Thanks to the distribution of weight over a large area, the treetop raft can literally float on some of the forest's most fragile branches. Professor Allais has finally realized his ambition.
Wow.
He's made it onto the top of the trees. At last, he has a chance to explore the incredible diversity of this unique ecosystem. After only a few minutes, he finds something unusual.
There's something I don't know. Look, there's something red. It's beautiful. What is it? Well, that's great. A red flower from the Apocynaceous family. This looks like a very important plant. I think that Madagascar should treasure this type of flower. It seems unbelievable, but it's a kind of flax. There are plants that back home in Europe are small grasses like flax. Here they take the form of huge woody vines, plants like this liana. We'll have to identify that. I think that people who really love these forests are extremely rare. In any case, there aren't any in governments or in the circles of decision makers, certainly not amongst the economists. Consequently, the tropical rainforest is in the hands of people who don't appreciate it. So in these conditions, how can we hope to save it?
Nearly 150,000 square kilometers of tropical forest is destroyed throughout the world every year, equivalent to the size of England and Wales combined. Even if it grows back, the diversity of the original forest is lost forever.
You have to understand that when a forest is destroyed, the first trees to grow again are not the ones that were destroyed. It seems paradoxical, but when the forest is intact, the only plants that can germinate are those plants that can tolerate the shade. Whereas when the forest is destroyed, the only plants that germinate are those plants that can tolerate the sun. So obviously they're not the same. If the Madagascar forest was razed to the ground, it would remain destroyed. There would be no generation of primary forest. Regeneration of forest is only possible if parts of the forest remain. That is why the Mashwal forest is so important. It is a genuine primary forest reserve.
The pretzel is not the expedition's only method of getting into the treetops. The airship has lowered this metal treehouse into a fork of a tree 30 meters up. It is an ideal observation platform for the scientists, so they move in for a few days. The logistics of the camp are entrusted to professional climbers. And then the scientists take over. Dante Fanoli is an expert in frogs. This is his first chance to look for them high up in the canopy.
Being in a forest like this is a unique opportunity for us. Primary forest like this is uncut, and the animals that we see here are very special. This is one of the last untouched areas of Madagascar, and it's really a treat to be able to get up in here, and it's an opportunity to access habitat that otherwise is not available to science. And we think that the possibility of frogs breeding in tree holes and living in the canopy is high. We have high hopes of finding perhaps a few new species.
It's good. Come on.
Okay. Oh, this is great. 35 feet higher than the canopy, looking down on the Bay of Ventonville. This is incredible. Yeah! Chameleon, right here. Oh, this is great. Did you get it? Mark, we have a bag for you. Hold on.
Wait.
Okay?
Okay.
Demonstrating that chameleons can live in the canopy quite successfully. There you go.
Scientists suspect that some animals living in the canopy may never set foot on the forest floor.
We believe that there are amphibians that don't ever have to go to the ground. They can live their entire lives in the treetops. And we believe that they've come up with some strategies to avoid having to go down, like utilizing very small pools of water located up in the canopy. So we'd like to try to figure out all of the little adaptations that have taken place that will allow frogs to survive in an inhospitable place like the forest canopy. Grab him, grab him.
The botanists are also up in the canopy. They're collecting samples to help them identify the plants.
C'est une rube. C'est une rubiacée.
In order to get the cuttings, Jean-Noël needs to move from one tree to another, but it's too dangerous, so an expert tree surgeon does it for him.
Ok, Jean-Yves, tu vas pouvoir y aller. Ouais.
His agility enables him to move among branches no thicker than his arm, at a height of 10 stories above the ground.
Ah oui, oui, je vois, oui. Ouais. Les petites boules vertes, là.
He's completely mad. It's unbelievable. No, I wanted to take lessons, but I could never manage to do that. It's not possible.
He is also hoping to find new species that could be useful to science.
With Madagascar, we have programs that work with chemists. They work on research into active ingredients, and we help them by determining the plants and indicating similar species, which may contain the same active ingredients, but maybe in larger quantities or with a slight chemical difference that could perhaps be more effective. We are like a plant dictionary for the other scientists, but as well as being a dictionary, we try to provide a life history, where the various species come from, what their closest relatives are, what their ancestors were in terms of fossils or on a very ancient level. So we are not just a dictionary, but more an encyclopedia.
As the study of the forest progresses, it becomes clear that some animals and plants have evolved distinctive and exceptional chemical properties. The scientists believe that if they can find these chemicals, it could help prevent the destruction of the forest. The key to their strategy is economics. Exploiting these compounds without damaging the forest could provide commercial opportunities, and if the forest can generate money, it will be worth protecting.
We have to stop destroying primal forests. It's just unacceptable. For me, the future is in the vast range of biochemical resources. It forms the basis of industries that are far more sophisticated than simply the timber industry. It's the basis of the pharmaceutical, perfume and flavoring industries. The added value is immense.
Les valeurs ajoutées sont énormes.
The hunt for these new, economically valuable resources will start high up in the canopy. It's the home of many rare flowers, as well as the insects they attract. The pretzel will give the scientists access to species that have never been studied before.
What's going on? Are you pulling on the rope down there or what?
But before they can even start work, they must make the 40-meter climb up to the top.
Ah, quel effort, mais ça vaut le coup.
Henri Pierre wants to trap insects that could have useful chemical properties. First, he has to catch them.
Wait a minute. Let's not make a mistake. 1H is at the top in the open. So this is 1H, yeah?
The team set out a series of buckets on the edge of the raft, which contain chemicals to attract the insects.
This has never been done before. The traps have always been tested on ground level. It's clear that the forest up here compared to the forest on the ground is not the same environment. For a start, there is a diffusion of the molecules. Here we're in the open air with the wind, and if you look down in the undergrowth, it's dark and humid with very little air movement. So there are two completely different environments. We have a whole series of molecules to test one after the other. We'll be able to see the results soon, but right now we're heading into unknown territory.
Henri Pierre's insect studies could have enormous economic potential. Scientists have already discovered a species of ant that produces the most efficient insecticide on Earth. But the potential resources of the forest don't stop with the insects. For Professor Allais, it's clear that the canopy is one of the most productive chemical laboratories on the planet.
For about 10 years now, we've shown that biochemical activity in canopies is much greater than in the undergrowth. The biochemical activity is what makes the plants potentially useful for medicine. Research for medicinal plants until now has been done on the ground. People take a leaf and do a test, and when the result is negative, they say, okay, this species has no interest for us. We have demonstrated that the biochemical interest is not on the ground, but in the canopy.
During their growth period, trees use most of their energy to increase in size and to move towards light. Once they reach the sky, they are colonized by animals that feed on their leaves, such as caterpillars. The plants under attack begin to develop chemical defenses, natural versions of pesticides and herbicides. These active compounds help protect them from the leaf eaters. Some of these molecules have already been exploited by man, with remarkable results. The rosy periwinkle, a tropical rainforest plant, produces anti-tumor agents that increase the survival rate of children with leukemia from 20% to 80%. It's not just medical chemicals that could have commercial value. The airship is taking off this morning with perfume specialists Dave Apple and Roman Kaiser. Their goal is to trap fragrances from the endemic Madagascar flowers. They are using a new piece of equipment, a raft that is suspended from the airship. It's specially designed so they can cover a large area of the canopy in search of these potential aromas.
It could also go down here. Should be already dry here.
Okay, stable. Okay.
Yes, this is very good.
The smell of certain flowers disappears when they are cut. To capture the scent, Dave and Roman enclose the flowers in a glass jar, using a small air pump. The perfumed molecules are then drawn out and fixed into an absorbent material.
Okay, everything is set. Oh, there is a palm tree in bloom. Have a look at the palm.
Okay.
This would be highly interesting.
Wait a second before
Yes,
testing
yes.
Okay.
Okay, no, full of insects and bees. Does it smell? No. Nothing.
It smells. I like it. Yeah.
Okay, let me see.
As the mission progresses, it becomes clear that the tropical forest is an almost inexhaustible reservoir of new molecules. Down on the ground, a local botanist has a surprise for Roman and Dave.
Okay,
Okay. Put them in some water in your...
Yeah.
That's a rubiaceae.
Yes.
That's beautiful. You keep this in the water, it will produce a scent in the evening.
Yeah.
The final part of the team's strategy is to find new types of food. As the hot air balloon is folded away, Dave Bowen's job is to test the samples of fruit collected.
This is very hard. It's like latex. This is not a good one. Not a tasteful species, that's for sure.
Dave is looking for new flavours that could be used in sorbets or yogurts, or for unknown fruits which could be the next kiwi or lychee.
It's interesting, I think this one is not quite ripe yet. It needs a little longer. This is another one we found. Really very interesting because it's dry and it's not very juicy. But it actually tastes more like dairy than fruit. It's very creamy, milky, but also has quite an interesting fruity taste. So they can imagine this, for instance, in ice cream or mixed with a more well-known fruit like strawberry or mango or something like that, just to give an exotic combination, a new twist, something that we don't already have. Always looking for new ideas, and this one's pretty interesting.
The search for new species that may have economic value has already led to some potentially valuable discoveries. Even after dark, the hunt for new species goes on. Many insects are nocturnal, so the only chance to see them is at night. Henri Pierre and his team have come up with a very low-tech approach to catching nighttime insects. Their traps are nothing more than a bright light suspended behind a white cloth. They've positioned one in the undergrowth and one 40 meters up on the canopy.
Welcome in the highest canopy light trap. Mr. David, I presume?
Livingston.
Yes, indeed. These are your animals.
There's already quite a few things arrived by the looks of it.
Yes, indeed.
Ah! Oh! Well, the potato seed now. Quelque chose là-bas. Yep, this is a micro, but a very large one.
A large micro?
A large tortricid. Yeah. Quick! No, you mustn't. You'll damage it. Have you got a large tube?
This kind of tube is good?
Yes.
White and black pyralids. Okay. Is it interesting for you?
Yes, but at the moment I'm just completely wrapped up in this cord, trying to disentangle myself.
Hop là, des pyralides, hein? Famille de papillons.
Where is my net?
Your net.
Okay, so this is just a convenient little net for this kind of situation. It's
very nice.
Made in Britain. I don't know whether you can get this in France. Pocket spring net. Very useful in these kind of conditions when something's just flying off.
Self-erecting tent, hein? Oui.
Yeah.
After several hours of trying to catch insects, Henri Pierre and David are in for a big disappointment.
There's almost nothing. You'd expect to get more in a sheet hung in a garden in a suburb of London or Paris on a summer's night or even on a winter's night.
Despite their small catch of insects, they think they may have discovered a new species.
I've never seen anything with this colour pattern before. I don't even know what genus it's in, but this is his tongue. Have a look here, it's just unrolling. You just get an idea. In fact, Madagascar has the hawk moth with the longest tongue in the world. It's called Darwin's predictor.
We've caught some creatures tonight that we've never had the chance to catch down below, so that's some consolation.
Is it interesting for you? Look, a pyralid.
For once, down in the undergrowth, the results are better.
It's a leaf bug, you know, a bit like a giant tingidus, or perhaps a hybrid.
Is it in the soil there, the organic matter?
No, it must have flown away.
The small haul of insects on the canopy could be due to the moon. In the undergrowth, the forest blocks out most of the moonlight, so the artificial light is very attractive to the insects. But up on the canopy, their lamp pales in comparison to the moon. Next morning, the scientists are up early to continue their hunt for insects, despite an uncomfortable night.
You were wet. Yes, I was wet, but only for maybe about 10 minutes.
It's not a problem, David. You're English.
I'm now completely dry again.
Without the aid of a light trap, David resorts to a more traditional way of catching insects. But down on the beach, they are trying a very different method.
Take it easy. If you get too much momentum, you'll hit the tree at full speed.
It's a helium-filled balloon called the canopy bubble.
Don't use all your energy at the start, Hector.
The bubble allows the scientists to move freely over the tree canopy, 30 meters above the forest floor. Thanks to this moored balloon, the insect catchers can happily levitate above the canopy, guided by a rope. Collecting insects from the treetops has never been so easy. All they have to do now is tap the trees to make them fall into a net. But it doesn't always go smoothly. When it's Henri Pierre's turn to go up in the balloon, it gets snagged in the branches.
You have to push on top of the ring. There's a little catch, like a ring. There is a pulley. You open it up and try to fasten it. That's it. As soon as you can grab the rope, put the block against the white rope, and then pass the rope inside. First open it, go on, grab the handle, Henri Pierre. We are coming to get you.
Luckily, help is at hand to untangle him.
Le robinet, c'est prêt? Accès! Le robinet! Ouais, c'est pas grave, de toute façon, là, il est au bout. Larguez tout!
Later that night, at base camp, the scientists discuss their findings.
This is one of the remarkable things one comes across, or nearly treads on, in fact, in the Malagasy forest. Look at this little fellow. It's less than the size of a 10-pence piece. There's 55 species of chameleons known in Madagascar, and this could even be the 56th.
It's a hawkmoth caterpillar, which was discovered today by my colleague David Lees. What's absolutely extraordinary are these two protuberances here on the body. It's completely unknown, but should correspond to a previously described species, but we don't know which one, because the caterpillars are not nearly as well known as the adults.
Did you know that chameleons are smaller than caterpillars? Living proof. There we go.
As the expedition draws to a close, the scientists embark on a unique study looking at the tallest tree in the forest. Every climber is on hand to help. Professor Allais' first goal is to classify the species, but it's hard to identify it just from the leaves.
We really need flowers and fruit. For example, the tree we're on here, I only know the family. I can't say any more until we have the flowers and fruit. Perhaps I can see some floral buds there.
Can you see just in front of you there? You see the leaves. Opposite. Yes, right there.
Yeah, there are bunches.
Just below the leaves. Oh, that's very interesting, very interesting. Take it back full, please.
Yes, it's full of them. We'll be able to find the species now.
Professor Allais identifies the tree as a Moluccan ironwood. It's nearly 500 years old. He wants to test out a theory that the tree has undergone subtle genetic changes throughout its long life.
We know that trees like this one don't have immune systems. We know that mutations are common, as with any animal or plant organism. But the absence of an immune system means that the mutations don't get eliminated.
He believes that these mutations are caused by the sun's ultraviolet radiation. If he's right, then there should be more genetic changes in the samples they collect from the top of the tree, which is exposed to the sun.
So here on the same branch, you can take from a bit to the left. There.
There?
That would be number 1 through 5. No, to your left.
There. I've already taken that one. I've put 1, 2, 3 on that one.
Okay, so this is 1, 2, 3. All right.
See you later, Francis. Easy, easy, Francis. You'll burn your hand.
The samples will have to be analysed back in the lab. Professor Allais hopes the results will help them understand how mutations allow trees like this to adapt to their changing environment. After 3 months of scientific exploration, the expedition is finally over. Before the scientists leave the island, they can't resist a preliminary analysis.
It's so small.
The amphibian team have already found something unusual.
This one, perhaps is a new species. One of the interesting characteristics are these 2 white spots that are on the back. Hopefully we'll look through the literature, look through papers, and see if anybody else has described a frog like this, and if not, then we'll be able to describe this as a new species.
And they're excited about a different frog they found, which they believe is poisonous.
This is a nice little mantella.
The clue is in the colour.
This guy's not that brightly colored on top, but underneath it certainly has bright colors. In some frogs, there's a defensive mechanism or behavior called the Unken reflex, where they'll arc their back and point upwards the undersides of their hands and feet. And what happens is a defensive mechanism, and we think that the sudden revealing of bright colors, or the sudden display of bright colors, would scare predators. Bright colors typically warn of toxins.
Looks a lot like the frogs in South America. Dante, I know you've seen a lot of the poison dart frogs. They have a homobatrachotoxin that can cause death within minutes. The Indians, the Choco and Bera Indians in Colombia, use from the poison dart frogs this batrachotoxin to kill monkeys and hunting and stuff like that. So it's a lot less toxic, but there's still studies going on of how to use these toxins for anesthesia and other things like that in the medical field. But if we lose all the frogs to deforestation or overpopulation, of course, there can be no studies, because most of these frogs don't contain their toxins in captivity because they're not eating the same diet that they do in nature.
Out of the 142 butterflies and moths collected, David Lees thinks they have found 2 butterflies which have never been described before. More than 550 plant species have been identified over the last few months. Out of 6 orchids discovered since the mission began, 3 are totally unknown. Jean-Noël Labatte now has to classify and preserve all the samples. Only then can they begin the scientific analysis, which could take up to 2 years.
We work for ourselves and for future generations who will be able to study what we have gathered, perhaps with new methods of exploration or new technology that maybe we have no idea of today. When great botanists of the past studied plants, they didn't know that one day we could study the DNA of plants, and yet we do that now based on the work they did before. So all of this is a continuum. It's only the technology that evolves and enables us to explore nature in a different way. In the tropical zone
is found in the forest canopy, which up until now has been virtually inaccessible to scientists. Now, for the first time, a scientific expedition has been launched to try and get on top of the canopy, over 40 meters above the ground. It's a dangerous mission, and they've had to come up with some unusual ways to reach this unknown world.
It's an opportunity to access habitat that otherwise is not available to science, and we have high hopes of finding perhaps a few new species.
Time is running out for the rainforest, but if they can reach the canopy and unlock its secrets, it could be the key to its future survival. This is the Maswala Peninsula in Madagascar. Situated off the coast of Africa, Madagascar has been cut off from the rest of the world for 80 million years. This isolation led to the evolution of unique animal and plant species. "75% are found nowhere else on Earth. But in Madagascar, as in much of the world, tropical forests are under attack. In cutting down the trees for firewood or burning them to cultivate the land, man has endangered the rare species that the rainforest has protected and cherished for so long. The Maswala National Park is the largest wilderness left in Madagascar. It is irreplaceable.
We have no idea how many species remain undescribed in this island, but with the deforestation rate, there's actually very little time left to study the fauna.
A scientific expedition has been set up to document the forest's extraordinary diversity and to identify new species before they are lost forever. A team of over 100 people has been assembled, working from a makeshift lab set up on the edge of the forest. 70 international scientists are collaborating with local experts, whose knowledge of the forest is invaluable. During the 3-month expedition, they will study the plants, insects, frogs and reptiles to produce a comprehensive survey of forest life. But the main aim of the expedition is to study the most diverse habitat of all, the canopy. They believe that many undiscovered species live only in the treetops. Before they explore the canopy, they set out to investigate the forest floor.
All right. All right.
You know what it is?
You want to dig them out? Please take a look.
Is that a frog? What's this guy?
Throw him in the bag.
I don't know, he's got an eye spot.
Yeah.
Eye spot on both sides. Looks like he's looking at you. How common do you think this one is?
Probably not.
I don't think this one's too common. Hard to find because they're buried. Burrowed in the dirt. We have to go figure out which one it is.
You need a bag, Mark?
Okay.
At first sight, the tropical forest seems chaotic, but in reality, plants and animals live here in perfect symbiosis. Each life form is both host and parasite, predator and prey, supporting the forest's delicate ecosystem. The balance is sophisticated, but precarious. It relies on the complex interaction between microscopic organisms, huge trees, humble insects, and highly developed mammals. Professor Francis Allais is an expert on the tropical rainforest. For him, it is a constant source of wonder. Even a simple tree creeper, the liana, is mysterious.
What seems to be particularly interesting in the case of the liana is that they are by far the least known plant in the forest. With the grasses, anyone can pick them, or rootless plants that live in the treetops. People are fascinated by them, and there are worldwide collections. Even with the trees, one can cut them down and collect the leaves. But how are you going to cut down something like that? First of all, we don't even know which part of the ground it comes from. And even if we could find the bottom, it's clear that cutting it would not make it fall. We can imagine that this liana is attached to that tree there, but most likely it's also attached to this one, and that one, and that one, and so to cut down something like that, you'd have to cut down a hectare of forest. That's why we know so very, very little about the liana. Their trick is that they can live without a trunk, so they climb very quickly and with a reduced metabolism. This enables them to be very active up above. They have a considerable leaf surface and enormous sexual activity because liana are plants with an overabundance of flowers, as is the case with the Madagascar jasmine or the bougainvillea.
Flowering plants appeared on Earth relatively late, but they adapted so well that they colonized almost every natural environment on the planet. Jean-Noël Labatte is the expedition's leading botanist.
We don't see many flowers, but often there are a lot of species that have really small flowers. And it's only once you look closely that you can see them. Like here, look. There is a little Dioscorea climbing up here. It doesn't have many flowers.
Henri-Pierre Abelonc is an insect specialist from the Natural History Museum in Paris. There are over 4,500 species of butterflies and moths in Madagascar. He believes many are only found in one small part of the island and nowhere else on Earth. He knows that some rare species of moth make a collective cocoon as part of their reproductive cycle. The best chance of finding one is deep inside the rainforest.
Here we are looking for cocoons. The big triangular cocoons that are spun collectively by a number of caterpillars to form the chrysalis formation. And that takes place here, on the lianas that hang under this big tree. Hey, I can see one. There it is. So as usual, there are a lot of ants. You can see here these granules each correspond to a cell in a moth's individual cocoon. And there we have a